At the beginning of the movie,
an FBI agent named Hal who was targeting a robber on a cargo plane. It is known that the robber has just robbed a lot of money, and now he wants to jump from the plane until on one occasion Hal could shoot the robber. But unfortunately he immediately jumped down the sea moves to a lumberjack named Will Walker, who was working at the time. After finishing his work, Will approached his colleague, who was also a lumberjack. This colleague was named Billy Rose, and she asked if what was going hunting tomorrow. Will said yes, because tomorrow was the opening day of hunting in the fall. Then Billy Rose invited Will to go to the bar later that night while discussing where they would go hunting, and that means Billy Rose will also come along. In short, Will and Billy Rose met at a bar here. Billy Rose said that she was going hunting in the southern forest, and would Will come with her. Warm replied that he was tired of going south, and he wanted to try going to the northern forests. After a long chat, Will finally decided to go to the northern forest, while Billy Rose stayed in the south forest. The scene switches to a mercenary named Darby, or let's call him Black, who is on a video call with me. For your boss here, the mafia boss says that his men have just robbed money by until now his men have not returned. For this reason, the mafia boss wants to hire Black to find his men because he believes the men have died in the middle of the forest. It was told that the me for your boss's subordinate was none other than the person who jumped from the top of the cargo plane yesterday. Then Black said that he was willing to find the mafia boss's men as long as the money was divided in half. The mafia boss, who had no choice, he finally agreed, as long as Black would start look for him tonight because tomorrow was the opening day of hunting. Black said that the mafia boss didn't need to worry because he would definitely complete the mission even if it was done tomorrow. A few hours later, when Moore came out of the bar, he accidentally met Black, was just about to enter the bar. Here Will and Black had a conversation about the opening day of hunting in the fall tomorrow. Then Will, who didn't have a cigarette at that time, asked Black for a piece. The next morning, after dawn shows, Will setting off alone to the northern forests to hunt. Upon arriving near the northern forests, Will immediately prepares firewood because Will plans to cook steak for breakfast. On the other hand, a southern range or want to open the gate, but at the same time, he's approached by Black and several of his colleagues. Here the ranger asked why Black wasn't dressed like someone who was going hunting. Black replied that he and his colleagues just wanted to be different. Then Black pulled out a gun and without hesitation finished off the ranger. The scene moved to the local sheriff, who was visited by Hal, previously known. Hal was an FBI agent yesterday, targeted the robber on the cargo plane. Here Hal told the sheriff named Ramos that last night he had shot a bank robber who was neat on a cargo plane. Hal was sure that the robber must have been seriously injured or killed when he got off the plane. Therefore Hal asked the sheriff to report to him if anyone found money or a dead body in the middle of the forest. Moreover, today was the opening day of hunting in the fall, and many people must have gone to the forest. Hearing this, the sheriff was ready to help, and he would immediately inform Hal when he heard the information at noon. It shows Will looking for game in the northern forests. After several hours of searching, Will finally found a very large deer, and he immediately took aim at the deer. But before he could shoot, Will's focus was distracted by some scattered money until finally Will found the robber, who had died along with all the money from the robbery. Of course, Will was so shocked by what he found, and Will decided to immediately bring the money out of the forest in short order. Will had reached the edge of the forest to retrieve Will's car, which was parked there. However, at the same time, Will was visited by Black and several of his colleagues who had seen Will counting money here. Black immediately asked Will to hand over the money right now, but Will refused because Will knew that the money didn't belong to Black, and he planned to hand it over to the sheriff's office. Then Black threatened Will by saying that if Will didn't want to comply, then Black would not hesitate to kill Will. But because Will still didn't want to, Black immediately ordered his men to attack Will until there was a shootout. On one occasion, Will threw a jerry can of gasoline, then shot it, causing an explosion. Then Will immediately went back into the forest. After that, Black was contacted by the Mayfield boss, who wanted to ask if Black had found the money. Black replied that the money had been found by, unfortunately, the one who found it was someone else. Hearing this, the mafia boss was angry and ordered Black to quickly return to get his money back. After that, Black told some of his men to split up, because to date, they also had to get the money, including killing with the lumberjack. 30 minutes later, while resting and reading the map, was suddenly attacked by Black. After a shootout with Black, Will decided to escape to another place. Then when Will had run far enough, unfortunately he met Black's men again until the shootout ensued again, until on one occasion Will could finish off Black's men. But in the shootout incident, it turned out that Will was hit by a bullet in the side of his stomach. Even though he was badly injured, Will still insisted on going south, because Will knew that in the southern forest there was his colleague Billy Rose. Until 1 hour after that, Will finally found Billy Rose's car. Then suddenly Will was unconscious, due to his wound in short order, Will came to his senses and wake up. Then he realized that his wound was bandaged and treated by Billy Rose. Then Billy Rose asked, "Where will bout that much money from?" Moore replied that it was probably the result of robbery, and Will found the money in the middle of the forest with a dead body. As for the wound in Will's stomach, he got it from the mercenaries, who were also wanted this money. After explaining everything, Will asked if Billy Rose had asked the police for help. Billy Rose replied that she hadn't, because she didn't understand what was going on. Then Billy Rose asked again where Will wanted the money to go. One replied that he wanted to hand over the money to the sheriff's office. Then Billy Rose explained that the two of them were just lumberjacks who always lived in poverty, for that how all the money was taken away and divided equally. Plus, Billy Rose knew very well that the sheriff and his staff were corrupt policies, but at the same time, suddenly Billy Ross was shot dead. It turned out that it was Black who would finish off Billy Rose Bull. Will himself was fortunately able to escape after running far enough. Will looked so confused because Black's group always found his location. Then Will, who was curious, opened the contents of the money bag, and sure enough in it, there's a tracker here. Will has an idea to trap Black's group using the tracking device. First Will made an explosive and put it in one of his bags. Then Will rushed to the intersection of the forest to put the bag containing the explosives, and Will would target them from the top of the hill. A few minutes later, Black and one of his remaining men finally appeared. Here Black was a little suspicious of the surroundings. Then when Black's men checked the bank line, there suddenly Will shot him with a sniper rifle. In this incident, one of Black's men was killed, while Black himself was shot in his hand. Then Will, who did want to waste the opportunity, he then came down from the hill to attack Black, and the two of them returned to shoot each other until one time they both ran out of bullets, so they decided to fight each other. Unfortunately, in the fist fight, Will, whose stomach was injured, had to lose to Black, and immediately Black snatched his money back. Luckily, at the same time, the hunters, who happened to be passing by, trying to stop the two of them until Black immediately decided to run away, or Will himself was badly injured, plus and also lost his money back. Will suddenly fainted a few hours later. It shows Black, who was reached the edge of the forest. Then, at the same time, Black was approached by Hunter, who wanted to ask if Black needed help. When Black invited into his car, Black suddenly shot him. It turned out that Black dared to kill the hunter even though he had offered him right when Black was already in the car and checked his money back. Black was immediately anchored. That's because it turns out that the bank only contains rocks at night. Will, who had previously fainted, is now awake, and he's in a clinic. Apparently there was also how old the FBI agent, who was ready to ask Will as investigation, then how as to exactly attack Will, and whether Will managed to bring his money. Will replied that he was attacked by several mercenaries who wanted the money. All of Black's men were able to be eliminated by Will, except for their leader Black himself. As for the money, what didn't could bring it, and now it might have been taken away not long after the nurse taking care of Will suggested that Will should rest first. This was followed by the arrival of the sheriff, who was short how that Will was definitely not lying. Moreover, the evidence was corroborated by some of the hunters who had brought Will here, and they hadn't all seen Will with the money. After that, the sheriff invited Howell to talk in another room, and he was also ready to make coffee for Howell. But when the sheriff wanted to take hot water in the pantry for clinic, he was suddenly killed by Black, who still felt a grudge against Will. The mile Howe also saw the dead nurse, and instantly he realized that things were not safe. Then there was a shootout, with Black broke, until on one occasion Black was able to subvert Howe using a knife. Here Black said that he didn't need to shoot Hal, because Howe would definitely die within 20 minutes, because his spleen was stabbed. Then Black went into Will's room, and without hesitation he shot him, but it turned out that Will was already on the side, and there was another fight between the two of them. When Mo was knocked down by Black, Will accidentally found a gun lying down. Then Will immediately shot him until the bullets ran out, but it turned out that Black was already wearing a bulletproof vest. So now he had a great opportunity to kill Will again. When that was about to happen, suddenly someone shot Black right in the head. As it turned out, with his remaining strength, Hal was able to knock Black to his death. After that, Will then immediately save Agent Howe, who has been badly injured by a stamp and his spleen. A few years later, it shows Will making a pilgrimage to Billy Rose's grave. Here Will apologizes because if at that time Will had immediately taken Billy Rose away, then Billy Rose wouldn't have died and still alive until right now. Then at the same time, Agent Howe arrives, because until now Howe still suspects that Will is actually hiding the money. Will reply that if the money was in his hands, maybe Will wouldn't look like a hobo or poor now. Plus, until now, he has also worked as a lumberjack, was only has so small salary. Hearing that, Howe said that maybe Will was deliberately doing all this so that Howe wouldn't suspect Will and arrest him. Will said that he was indeed afraid of how maybe at that time Will wouldn't want to save, how it would let him die with the stamp, and his spleen in the end. Agent Howard believed Will. Then Will said that the day as after tomorrow you trying to start a new life in another region, knowing this house supported Will's decision, because starting a new life was not the wrong decision at all. The next day went to the forest alone to look for something until one Will had reached the place he was going to. It turned out that Will had been storing all his money under the trees. With the money he has now, the
Subscribe and press the bell so you don't miss any updates.